Hi, welcome. My name is Birgit Penzenstadler. I'm an associate professor at the University of Chalmers in Sweden and an adjunct professor at the Lappeenranta University of Technology in Finland. And today I get to speak to you about the not so subtle art of taking a deep breath, live wiring yourself for better output and experience. This is an interactive edutainment performance. I just came up with this new genre. I may not entirely have invented it by myself, but this was my intention for today. So I would love for you to be entertained as well as informed and hopefully motivated to do something more with your breath than it just keeping you alive, because it can actually help you thrive. And that rhymes. And there is this old German kids TV series where never mind, the hero says what rhymes is good. His name is Pumuckl. With that, back to the topic. So just notice for a second how you feel right now in your body. What are the physical sensations that are going on? Just tune in for a moment. What is tense? What maybe wants to move? We spend a lot of time in our heads, so let's just get back into our body. Stretch tall here for a second. Reach up your arms. Exhale with a sigh. Do that 3 times. Inhale once more. And a third one, because all fairy tales third's a charm. Good. How do you feel now? Ready to dive in? Let's do it. First question that you may have is, why does this topic matter? As you can see on the right, a lot of us may have this going on. Ooh, write a report, create a model of this, answer my emails, schedule some meetings, update something for a review, and then finish some other reviews that I've been doing. And then the whole thing, wash, rinse, and repeat. So many of us may have the busy badge in our lives. So the subtle art of taking a deep breath comes in here when, we know it's simple. Just take a deep breath. I'm going to get it all done. There's enough time for all the things that really matter. But simple isn't always easy, and common sense isn't always common practice. So live wiring for better output and experience means we're going to use some really simple tools to shift things tremendously, potentially. On top of that, currently, world situation, there's a lot of stuff going on. We've been in a rather restricted state, most of our countries, because of COVID. So there's a lot of health concerns. There have been a lot of mental health challenges due to the restrictions that came along with that. There have been work changes for many of us. Maybe we've lost our job, or we still have our job, yay. And all of a sudden we're working full-time home office. And that brought with it some changes in the home space. So as I'm recording this talk, the laptop is standing on a footstool, the light is standing on my office chair behind it, and I'm sitting on my meditation cushion. My standing desk is a foam roller, and when I stand up the foam roller and put the laptop on top of it, I can stand behind that little wobbly table that I call my desk at home. It works. For other people, it means they have kids running circles around them for half of their work time, which is also not necessarily making it easier. And then with that comes our shift to many more things online. So many of us may experience some kind of online fatigue. We have come to schedule our meetings back to back because now we don't even physically need to move in between 2 meeting rooms. No, I just click on another link. Ta-da! I'm in the next meeting. May not be so good for our health if we don't even take the time to drink water in between and go to the bathroom and stretch our legs a little. So we see there might be some room for improvement. Now, you may tell me, honestly, not that big of a deal. Well, what challenges are you experiencing right now? Just look inside for a second. And if it's not you, of all the challenges that were listed on the slide before, maybe it's some of your team, maybe it's your peers, maybe it's your students, your supervisors, whoever around you. Maybe it's in your private life, maybe it's your family or friends or both of them. And I know that whom I've given this talk, and you probably as audience, we're amongst the more privileged ones, because otherwise we wouldn't have the time to do this right now. I fully acknowledge that, and I'm grateful for everything that I have in my life and that I could still do within these reduced settings. At the same time, if we do not acknowledge that we're also going through some challenges and experience some stress and experience some things that may make us worry, we're not doing our mental health a favor. And we'll get to why in a minute. And if there is really nothing going on for you at all, if you're listening to this talk, you're probably interested to some extent in systems development or in software development, because that's a lot from where my audience comes from. If not, we're just going to tie it into here for a second anyways. We have a responsibility for the systems that we develop. I have a background in software engineering, so I speak about this a lot. The systems that we put out into the world, they are hopefully there to support people to have a better life in one way or another. And so there is a lot of time, because of the systems we develop, that we spend in our brains. Now, that leads to some imbalance. Often we get off work from our laptop with the sense of having spent all day in our head and just barely remembering, oh, I got a body that I need to feed. I got a body that I need to hydrate. And maybe that thing wants to move. I mean, that's the first house that we got. We're going to try and work with this body as good as we can, because otherwise it may not last as long. So what now? So what? Yeah, there is some level of stress. We deal with it, really. Yeah, we do. But how? When I say, yeah, we just deal with it, that's kind of brushing it off. Like, are we really dealing with it? Are we paying attention to it? Are we taking care of it? Let's look into what happens when we are under stress. First thing that happens is our breath becomes really shallow, because our muscles get a little more tense around the chest and in our belly, and therefore we won't breathe as deeply. One of my big heroes in neuroscience is Andy Huberman from the Huberman Lab. This is a picture from his Instagram account where he educates the public on how to take better care of their brain and their nervous system and all these things. And he has these broken down drawings where he explains what's really going on in the body. And so here he is explaining how we have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. And they are both active during different parts of our day. So when we're under action, we have the sympathetic nervous system. And when we're relaxing and in not action, then it's the parasympathetic nervous system that's active. And you may already notice, oh, many of us may be biased towards one side of this so-called balance. So when we have adrenaline in our body, especially during prolonged stress, then there are long-term consequences on body and mind. The parasympathetic nervous system is the one that's responsible for restoring. Now let's look at what that means if that one does not get enough time. The biggest player in your parasympathetic nervous system is the vagus nerve. It's the largest cranial nerve. And as you can see here, it connects to a large majority of your vital organs. So if we are under stress, you have the adrenal glands sitting right down there by your kidneys. They release epinephrine. that gets sent to the brain. So adrenaline is what it's called when it's running through the body, and epinephrine is what it's called when it runs in the brain. And it goes to the amygdala and into the hippocampus. So the hippocampus is the one that's responsible for your memory. The amygdala is connected to your emotional experiences. And when there's a threat to our well-being, then the brain protects our survival. So threat to our well-being means anytime we get under stress, brain protects our survival. How does the brain do that? Perceived threat, it's either fight, maybe I get angry, or it's flight, I just want to run away, or it's a freeze response, I just can't move anywhere. And maybe you have noticed at some point in time, when you're completely overwhelmed, when you have way too many things to do, you go into this strange paralysis of not getting anything done. That's the freeze response. So when that happens over extended periods of time, a prolonged stress, that is going to strengthen those negative neuronal pathways. So it's going to ingrain them more deeply. And as you know, the road often traveled is the one that tends to get traveled again. So we get to an unhealthy level of stress hormones in our body instead of rest. And the optimal healthy functioning is compromised, which means we have a lower immunity, we're more susceptible to disease, it impairs the functioning of our DNA, and it helps to prematurely age, which very few of us want to. I'd rather not. So we have a big risk of general disease here. Also, a low vagal nerve tone of this vagus nerve makes us hypervigilant. So we're just not relaxed anymore. We're always like on our toes. And you may know from experience that that is not a pleasant state to be in. Like that is an alarmed state that is necessary when there is danger. It's not a good all-time, all-day state. And over time, that will lead you to having an even lower threshold for stress. Now, epinephrine cannot pass the blood barrier. The vagus nerve decides how well it will deliver that epinephrine to the brain to search the memory bank for a possible threat, so it can then stimulate a fight or flight response. So that means if I train my vagus nerve so that it doesn't deliver as much epinephrine to the brain, I'm going to have less stress. Correct. And why would we want to do that? Well, let's see. Do you have your best ideas under high stress? I don't. How many of your team members make less mistakes under stress? I don't have many. Do you make better decisions under high stress? I don't. There are people who are capable of still taking good decisions under stress because they have specifically trained for it, like special forces, but the average person does not make good decisions under stress. Now, there is some good news. The good news is it's not too late, because we can actively influence and tone the vagal nerve to reduce the fight or flight response at any point in time. And if you have a high vagal nerve tone, then you're able to recover more quickly from stress. So upsetting situations don't upset you to the same degree that they used to, and you recover from them more quickly. Now that ability has been called neuroplasticity for quite a while, and it's the brain's ability to reorganize. I'm right now reading a book about the brain being live wired. It's by David Eagleman, neuroscientist in Stanford. And he says, well, the term neuroplasticity came from molding plastic, but the metaphor maybe isn't perfect because once plastic is molded, it tends to keep its form, whereas our brain is continually rewiring itself. That's why I put live wiring in the title of this talk. So it allows the neurons to compensate for injury, for disease, for stress, and to adjust their activities in response to changes. So we can have neurogenesis, which is building of new neurons, building of new synapses in between neurons, strengthening synapses that are already there, and weakening synapses that are not used as much anymore. I don't know if you have gone through an occurrence of burnout in your life. I have at one point. I've had one in 2009. It was not a pleasant experience. I was going through a very stressful period in my life, and because of that, wasn't taking care of my body as well, and that just spiraled and then over time backfired. So that was the first time that got me really, really thinking about, got to do something better here. And it has led me to establish a bunch of practices in my life, and a few of those I will introduce you to here, including their scientific background. And it's mainly around the breath, as you may guess from the title. So the benefits of live wiring, of training your vagus nerve, are for the brain. It increases concentration and cognition. It increases your creativity and productivity, and it enhances connection and communication. For your body, you will find yourself in a better mood and a greater resilience. And resilience just shows up like the small word in here. However, you know that it entails all those other medical benefits of, here, fine print: gut increases stomach acidity, digestive juices, and gut flow. Anti-inflammatory, overcome thyroid conditions, arthritis, and fatigue. Heart, controls the heart rate variability and blood pressure, lower risk for heart disease and stroke. The vagus nerve inhibits the fight or flight response. Liver and pancreas, controls blood glucose levels. Increasing tone can lower the chance of diabetes. And the gallbladder reduces toxins and breaks down fat due to its ability to influence the release of bile. That sounds pretty good for the body. Let's get into what this means. How do we do that? Yes, you're on the right track. Breathing techniques. It was in the title. The trouble with the breathing is we usually breathe too shallow. Let's take a deep breath with that. And we don't breathe out all the way. So half of the time we breathe too shallow because we're actually not breathing out sufficiently so that there would be even enough space to breathe in a lot. So maybe just watch yourself over the rest of this talk. Like, how well do you exhale? And can you exhale a little more? And third one, why don't we even notice? Because we spend a lot of time in our heads and not so much in our bodies. Our awareness is all caught up here instead of having a good share of it down in the body. The solution are a couple of simple respiratory techniques to train and practice. And that means doing that a few minutes per day to actively practice and become more aware of it. And that is going to carry over in the long run into your everyday breathing. So let's see. Do you want to try this with me? I'm a researcher, so I love self-experiments. And I would love to try out one breathing technique with you. May I have your permission? If you keep watching, I hope yes. So lean back, close your eyes here for a moment, and then take a deep breath. Exhale through the mouth. Good. So you want to sit up straight here. We're going to take deep inhales through the nose. And then your exhale is going to be passive. You just let go and let go of all of your breath through the mouth. You don't need to force it. It sounds something like this. Are you joining me? Carry on here. Keep that rhythm. If your body feels a lot of energy rushing through, that is part of it. If you get a tad lightheaded, that is also part of it. Continue going with your breath. If the rhythm is too quick for you, just go a little slower, just really deep inhales through the nose, and then exhale, let it all go through the mouth. Good. Keep on going. Relax everything else while you practice this breath. So if you notice your jaw's getting tight or your forehead getting tight, try to let go of that. Let go of your shoulders. Just a few more rounds. Deep inhale. And with your next inhale, fill yourself up all the way to the top and then gently pause your breath. Stay right here with your paused breath for as long as that is okay for your body. Because we have been doing really deep inhales and exhales, you're likely to be able to hold your breath longer than usually or to pause your breath longer than usually, but there is no need to force it whatsoever. Whenever your body asks you to release that breath, then you do go ahead and release that. And after that, you can just take a quiet moment and listen inwards. And then I'm curious, what sensations do you feel in your body now? This was a tiny taster. The full breathing session, which uses a similar technique in certain rounds and relaxation in between and a longer relaxation at the end, would take a session of 90 minutes. There are shorter ways of doing that, but that would be the full Monty. And you could, with regular practice, perceive a pretty cool list of benefits, including higher stress resilience, because we're toning the vagus nerve, more mental and emotional capacity, improved focus and decision-making, better communication and creativity, improved sleep and energy restoration. Trust me, you do this 10 minutes before you go to bed or while you're already laying in bed, you'll sleep a lot better. Increased immune system and a higher overall well-being. So there's plenty of good reasons. Can you imagine this could be useful to you, to your team, to your peers, anybody around you? I've done research on this, so you can take my word for it, or you can try it out, or you can trust the research. So what have I been doing? I've looked into neuroplasticity practices, specifically those breathing practices, to increase individual sustainability and resilience. I called it Rise to Flow. So we use either movement or breathing practices or mind exercises for doing this. So far, I've focused on the breathing practices. I'm looking forward to doing the next studies to be able to compare that. It's in the proposal stage. Why do I do this? Because long-term mental and emotional health, productivity, creativity. What's the cost if you don't do it? Well, there might be less productivity or not enough innovation capacity. You might lose employees. This is for me to sell this to companies, to tell them it will make sense to do that. Yeah, invest in your most valuable resource, your employees. Now, how do we do that? I am investigating the benefits and the limits of these techniques. I also look into the adequate timing of these interventions in the future with using AI and some decision-making support systems. Now, what exactly have I done so far? I've had a first run, September through December 2020, with 12 live sessions over the course of 12 weeks, and a second run from January to March that we just wrapped up. That was with 8 live sessions, so we did an 8-week rerun. We collected a bunch of data in this with a pre and post survey that included several instruments that were validated in psychological research before. MAAS is the Mindful Attention Awareness Scale. SPAIN is the Scale of Positive and Negative Experiences. PWB is psychological well-being. PST is positive thinking. SE is self-efficacy. HPQ is perceived productivity. And the IPIP is a personality test that we checked to control for personality, but it showed no differences in the study that we did. We had a weekly survey where we just checked the World Health Organization 5 to check where people's well-being is like. It just has 5 items, so that was a quick one. And then we did journal entries every day where people could reflect upon what they had been going through. And then we did exit interviews with the people who agreed to do that. For the weekly sessions that we did, our blueprint is the following. On Mondays, we send a little primer for the topic of the week. Could be something like time management. It could be giving feedback or listening well. And then we have a live session that was on Thursdays where we first talk about that topic, and I introduced a couple of tools that they can work with. And we also provided a workbook that people were able to use for their own notes. And then we did a joint breathing practice together. So that whole session was 90 minutes in total. And we provided an optional guided meditation that they could listen to over the course of the week for their own practice. And then we had some reflection questions for them. With all that, the results that we have found so far is, and this is new, about to be published research, so you're the first ones to learn about it, from 3 runs of the study, and you're like, wait a second, 2 slides ago you said 2 runs. True story. The first one, I had to learn more about logistics because I was very conscious about the privacy of some students that I had recruited, and made it somehow impossible for me to reach my own participants in a good manner for communication. And so that study kind of fizzled out into nothing. But then run 2 and 3, they were pretty successful. Each of them had over 100 signups. And then we had 20-ish finishers. Now, the first question you may ask is, wait a second. If you had 80% of your participants dropping out, I kind of been that good. So of course, I was very curious about why they would drop out. And the main reason was too much work, too much on my plate. So there we go, back to where we started. We initially, and a lot of people who emailed me even said in their email, I know this doesn't make sense. I know the study is probably exactly what I need, and I'm dropping it because I have too much stress and too much going on right now. So I said, come back whenever you feel like it. The quantitative and qualitative insights that we've gotten so far, people are more cheerful and in good spirit and more relaxed and calm. Those were the things that we drew from the statistics. I don't have all the pretty box plots on here because the wizard that helped me with them, Richard Torka, should be the one speaking about those. And it's also not super relevant for the message of this talk. And we've seen it reduces anxiety and stress a lot, especially from the people who took the exit interviews and from the qualitative journal data. This made a lot of difference. People had really good reflections on inner processes, in how they deal with the world, and how they deal with their own emotions, and how they work through stress. Now you may say, well, that's nice to hear that they feel better now, but what about me? What of that can I apply right now? Well, first of all, there will be a future Rise to Flow study. I haven't advertised it yet because I haven't decided on a start date, but it will be out, so keep following. First thing you can do is breath awareness. So the simple fact of several times per day becoming aware of your breathing, how you're breathing, how deep you're breathing. And just focusing on where the breath goes in your body. That will bring you back more into your body. That's already a good start. Because that way you can become more aware of what else is going on in your body. Like, am I actually stressed? Oh, I'm realizing my shoulders are tense. There's probably stuff going on. And oh yeah, I do realize I'm thirsty. Let's go get a glass of water. Second piece, nose breathing. So in his book, Breath, James Nestor wrote so much about how we, as a society, have started to breathe way too much through our mouth. And the single most important indicator for long-term health is lung capacity. So breathing deeply and breathing through your nose are two really important functions. And now you're going to be really conscious of your breath for the rest of this talk, at least. And then there are a few rather simple breathing techniques that I'm happy to teach you, not right this second, because I don't have that much for the talk, but there is a free mini course that you can sign up for that I'll also put into the notes. So let's take a breather right here. You might be thinking, wait, what again? Then we just did. Well, let's take a different one. Let's take a metaphorical deep breath and a real one. Like, what else does it mean, the not so subtle art of taking a deep breath? You remember the busy badge? There's a lot of really good research out there on flow, also known as being in the zone. And all that flow research, you may know the father of this research, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And then the next generation, the Flow Research Collective, both of them say that reset time, regular reset time, is really, really important and crucial for enabling flow, because flow is a super highly productive state and it comes and goes in waves. It needs, in order to be able to peak and high perform, it needs to be able to come down and go through a decent recovery. So that requires weekly reset time, monthly, quarterly, yearly, and then every few years, like an even larger break, sabbaticals. So that is my invitation for you to check in with your reset time. What does your reset time schedule really look like? And do you really disconnect then? What helps you to get out of your head, back into your body, disengage from all things work, and just play, just restore? When we do that, our decision-making capabilities get better, our intuition gets better, and that's another piece of work that I've dove into. So I did an expert interview study and developed an intuitive decision guidance model. This is published at Alt-Chi this year, coming out in about 6 weeks. And that paper is called Tapping In, How to Decide Mind, Heart, or Gut. There is one more pointer about this intuition thing. A lot of conversations that I've been in recently about how do we get into a flow with all the things that have shifted, and how do we get the the reset time that we're wishing for now that we're restricted here in this and that in one way and another. And I so often hear people say, oh, when everything is back to normal, then, and my gut feeling is, nope, well, that ain't happening. we're not going to get back to whatever things were exactly before. I mean, hopefully we'll learn something from this, right? Yes, I do wish to travel again, of course. I love traveling. And instead of hoping to get back to what was an old normal before, can we instead just define what our desired state of being is? Can we decide what we really want to manifest and how we want to work? There are a lot of really cool things about the whole flexibility that came from many of us who are now working from home. Yes, there are some inconveniences, and there are also some things that have been really cool. Me going out for a lunch run, way easier when I have my own shower here. And the conclusion from that is there a way how we can take the positive things from this and also invite some of the things that we dearly missed back in? So where does that leave us now? Takeaway messages. If we don't take action on the stress that we're undergoing, and not all the stress is always harsh and loud and deadline driven. There is also the quiet stress of social isolation, of just feeling shut down. That is also stress to the body. So we want to acknowledge that as well. There is also productive stress. Don't get me wrong, not all stress is bad. There is a level of productive stress that kicks us into gear. But let's just target the part of it that's unhealthy and that we know is over the top because we don't get enough recovery time. So if we don't take action on that, we're endangering our long-term health. Think hospital bills, disabilities, cardiac disease, diabetes, stroke, burnout, ability to work, and relationships. So you brush your teeth and you take a shower, right? For physical health, physical hygiene. Can we maybe normalize mental and emotional healthcare and hygiene as well? Can that be a normal thing to take care of our mental and emotional health? Let's take another deep breath with that. And while we're at it, write that down on a Post-it in bold letters and put it somewhere next to your device so that you see it frequently, so that you have a physical reminder for during the day. With that, I want to acknowledge and say thanks to a couple of people who were super supportive in this research so far. Francisco Gomez, my colleague here, Leticia Duboc, colleague in Spain, Richard Torkar, the master of statistics and a wonderful colleague, and Juliet Norton, my co-author for the intuition paper. They all get an awesome associate award for being really good research collaborators and supporters of my work. And that's what they get a silly penguin onesie dance for, as you can see on the bottom of that award picture. Also, a couple of references if you're interested in the research publications backing this up. But to wrap it up, really, summary: permanent stress wrecks a lot of things. Your physical, mental, and emotional health, your work performance, your relationships. Therefore, I did a study on breathing techniques, on specific breathing techniques to strengthen your vagus nerve that is mostly responsible for controlling the fight, flight, or freeze response. And it has led to participants being more cheerful and in good spirits, to feeling more relaxed and calm, and to reduce anxiety and stress. And then I also gave you a bit of a reflection on flow and the required reset to be able to be in flow. All of this propagates into the systems that we create and that we bring out into the world as software systems developers. So we have a shared responsibility. We have a shared responsibility as researchers, educators, team leaders, and as fellow humans, very simply, to just do the best we can and be there for one another, to take good care of ourselves. And with that, I am excited to hear what you think about this, to take all your questions on this. Please leave some comments below if this has served you, what questions that prompted for you, what things I didn't answer that you were interested in. And, you know, maybe you'll be the next one to get an awesome associate research award. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I hope this has served you, and be in touch.